Hi everyone, this video I am going to explain a Python program that implements a decision tree classifier using Sklit Learner. First I import all the required libraries. I import pandas as PD to handle the dataset. Then I import decision. After loading the data, I define another function called encode features. In this function, I first create a label encoder object. Then I use a for loop to go to each column in the dataset. For every column, I apply label encoding, which converts text values into numerical values. Finally, I return the encoded dataset. Next, I define a function called load data. Inside this function, I use pd.readcsv to read the dataset from the given file path and store it in a variable called data frame. Then I return the dataset so it can be used later in the program. Then I define the train decision tree function. Inside this function, I separate the dataset into input features and output labels. I store all columns except the last one in X, and I store the last column in Y. Which after that I split the dataset into training and testing data using train test split. I use 80% of data for training and 20% for testing. I also set random state to 42 so that the results remain the same every time I run the program.
Now I define a function called classify sample to predict the result for new input data. First I convert the new sample dictionary into a data frame. Then I encoded it into numerical form. After that I use the trained model to predict the result and return the prediction. Next, I create the decision tree classifier model and specify that it should use entropy as the splitting criterion. Entropy helps the model calculate information gain and choose the best features for splitting the data. Then I train the model using the fit method with the training data. Finally, I return the trained classifier. In the main part of the program, I first call the load data function to read the dataset. Then I encoded the dataset using the encode feature function. After that, I trained the decision tree model using the encoded data. Next, I print the structure of the decision tree using export text so we can see how the model makes decisions step by step. To conclude, this program demonstrates the complete workflow of a decision tree classifier, from data pre-processing to model training and prediction. This is a simple example of supervised machine learning used